What if I told you that WWE just handed the keys to their most valuable storyline real estate to a 26-year-old with barely 3 years of experience, a guy who already burned bridges with a Hall of Famer before he ever set foot on national television? Stick around, because today we are diving into one of the most fascinating gambles WWE has made in years, and by the end of this video you are going to understand exactly why this single decision might tell us more about the future of the entire company than anything else happening on the roster right now. Welcome back to Wrestling Juice, the channel where we break down the stories behind the storylines, the decisions behind the decisions, and the risks that WWE is willing to take when the cameras start rolling. If you are new here, consider hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications, because we cover this kind of deep dive analysis multiple times a week, and you do not want to miss it. Now let us get into it. Earlier this week, after months of rumors and speculation swirling around the internet wrestling community, Zilla Fatu made his long-awaited debut on NXT television. For those who might not be caught up, Zilla is the son of the late, legendary Umaga, and that means he carries the bloodline of one of the most respected and feared families in the history of professional wrestling, the Samoan wrestling dynasty. This is a family tree that includes some of the biggest names to ever step into a WWE ring, and now the newest branch of that tree has officially entered the picture on the black and gold brand. His arrival was not some quiet, understated call-up either. Zilla interrupted a heated match between Cruz Montana, who longtime fans will remember as the former Mike Santana, and Grayson Waller. That match was not just a random bout thrown together for the sake of filling time. It was a critical contest to determine the #1 contender for the NXT Championship. Think about that for a second. WWE did not choose to debut Zilla Fatu in a random backstage vignette or a low-stakes squash match on the undercard. They chose to insert him directly into the biggest storyline on the brand, the fight for a shot at the top title. That is a massive statement of intent, and it strongly suggests that Zilla is going to be woven directly into the championship picture on NXT moving forward. So here is the real question we need to unpack today. Is this too much too soon for the newest member of the Samoan wrestling family to step into the WWE spotlight? My honest, gut reaction is that yes, this might be moving a little too fast, and I want to walk you through exactly why I feel that way, while also being completely open to the idea that I could be wrong, and frankly, I hope that I am wrong, because nobody wants to see a talented young performer stumble under the weight of expectation. Here is the thing. Despite only being active in the wrestling business for roughly 3 years, Zilla Fatu has already found himself in the middle of a very public and very messy dispute with Booker T, the WWE Hall of Famer. That conflict became serious enough that Zilla actually left Booker T's training promotion, Reality of Wrestling, the very place where he was supposed to be learning the fundamentals of the business and building the foundation of his career. Now, to be fair, the two of them eventually patched things up and mended the relationship, which is a good sign of maturity and growth. But the fact that this kind of public falling out happened at all, this early into his career, is worth paying attention to. On top of that, Zilla also had a run with Game Changer Wrestling a couple of years back, and that relationship did not end smoothly either. The promotion eventually announced that he would not be working with them going forward, and they cancelled his previously booked dates. That is now two separate situations, with two different promotions, where things did not end on the best of terms. I want to be crystal clear about something here, because this is important. This is not meant to be some kind of personal attack on Zilla Fatu, the son of Umaga. This is not about tearing down a young performer or questioning his talent or his heart for the business. What I am trying to highlight is a much bigger and much more consistent pattern that we have seen play out over and over again in professional wrestling, a pattern where young performers get handed a level of responsibility and exposure that they simply are not ready for yet, often before they have developed the perspective needed to truly appreciate the opportunity sitting in front of them. Let us talk about how this has played out historically, because wrestling has no shortage of examples on both ends of the spectrum. Take Natalya and TJ Wilson, for example. Both of them signed WWE contracts when they were still very young, barely more than kids stepping into a massive corporate machine. But they had the maturity, the discipline, and the perspective to handle that responsibility the right way. And look at the results. Decades later, both of them are still working for the company, still respected, still contributing. That is what it looks like when a young talent is given a big opportunity and actually rises to meet it. Now flip that coin over. Tony Atlas, or whoever actually ghost wrote his book, quite literally titled his memoir Too Much, Too Soon. That phrase became so synonymous with his story that it was later used as the title of an episode of Dark Side of the Ring covering his career just last year. That title exists because his career serves as a cautionary tale about what happens when a performer is thrust into a spotlight before they are prepared for it. Then there is Teddy Hart. Here is a guy who had every physical gift you could ask for. He had more than one opportunity to become the next great high-flying star carrying on the legendary Hart wrestling lineage. But time and time again, personal and professional issues derailed him, and eventually his reputation in the industry became such a mess that any potential he once had was largely wasted. It is one of the more frustrating what-if stories in modern wrestling history. And do not forget about Rene Dupree. He signed his WWE contract at just 18 years old, an incredibly young age to step into that kind of pressure cooker environment. Just 5 years later, his run at the top level of the business was essentially finished. 5 years! That is how quickly things can unravel when a young performer is not equipped to handle the demands of the spotlight. So when we zoom out and look at putting Zilla Fatu on national television with only 3 years of in-ring experience under his belt, we have to acknowledge that this is genuinely rare, especially in the modern era of professional wrestling. We are talking about a period in the industry where performers with several years of international experience, guys who had already proven themselves across multiple territories and promotions around the world, were still required to spend meaningful time in developmental before getting anywhere near the main roster spotlight. That is the standard that has generally been in place. Whether Zilla has the maturity to handle this level of notoriety, and by extension, whether he can handle representing a massive, publicly traded, global corporation like WWE, is something that we genuinely do not know yet. Only time is going to answer that question for us. But here is where I want to pump the brakes a little bit on the negativity, because none of what I just said means that WWE automatically made the wrong decision here, at least not in terms of the broader strategic concept behind it. I have actually been covering the topic of second-generation stars quite a bit recently, and if there is one thing that has become abundantly clear through all of that research and analysis, it is this. WWE desperately needs to commit to a real, consistent, and sustained youth movement. This is not a maybe. This is not a nice to have. This is a necessity for the long-term health of the product. Now, look, Vince McMahon has plenty of well-documented personal controversies that have come out in recent years, and we are not here to relitigate all of that today. But strictly from a booking and business strategy standpoint, his later years running the creative direction of the company were, frankly, quite sloppy. If I had to guess at the reasoning behind the decline in quality, I would point to a kind of unintentional complacency that set in, especially after TNA collapsed following the whole Hulk Hogan situation in the early 2010s, and before All Elite Wrestling launched in 2019 and gave the industry its first real, legitimate competition in years. Without that competitive pressure pushing the company to evolve and innovate, WWE took the easy road. They leaned heavily on part-time legends sitting at the top of the card, because bringing back a familiar name does not require any of the heavy lifting that comes with investing in a younger talent and then actually building compelling, led storylines to showcase that talent to its fullest potential. And look, anytime you invest real trust and real spotlight into someone new, there is inherent risk involved. But avoiding that risk entirely comes with its own long-term cost. Does anyone else remember how mind-numbingly repetitive Monday Night Raw felt throughout the middle of the 2010s? There were entire stretches where you could skip an entire month of programming and genuinely not miss a single meaningful development in the storylines. Brock Lesnar was the champion during a lot of that stretch, but he was a part-time champion, and the entire brand was built around a centerpiece character who was regularly absent from television for 3 months at a time. Think about how strange that is from a business perspective. Your top championship, the most important prize in the entire promotion, was not even present on the show for a quarter of the year at a time. The ripple effect of that decision was significant. The WWE audience, and especially the more casual segment of that audience, became conditioned over time to view the current, active roster as fundamentally secondary and less important compared to legends from wrestling's past. That is a big reason why nostalgia became such an enormously powerful drawing card for the company during certain stretches. To be clear, I am not suggesting that legacy stars from previous generations should be tossed aside or ignored. Their value and their drawing power is a legitimately valuable asset in a whole variety of ways, and smart booking finds ways to use that value without leaning on it as a crutch. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Outside of a small handful of exceptions, WWE management has not consistently trusted or invested in younger talent to occupy the top spots that are relied upon to actually move the needle for the company. Just look at where things stand right now. John Cena, Bill Goldberg, AJ Styles, and Brock Lesnar have all stepped away from full-time competition. Seth Rollins, while younger than that group, has dealt with such an extensive list of injuries throughout his career that, as talented as he undeniably is, there is a real possibility his in-ring career winds up being shorter than it otherwise could have been. Roman Reigns himself has stated in recent interviews that he is considering exploring retirement within the next few years. At the very least, it would not be surprising to see Roman step back from a full-time schedule in favor of limited, special appearance-style cameos a handful of times per year. And then there is Randy Orton, one of the last remaining active performers from that early 2000s generation, but even his in-ring future remains unpredictable given his own injury history, including an incident as recent as this year's WrestleMania. Now, on a more optimistic note, there does seem to be a genuine shift happening recently toward prioritizing younger talent. Obafemi is a great example of this. He is being positioned and pushed as a foundational piece of the company's future right now, at 28 years old, rather than being told to wait another decade for that opportunity. Bron Breakker is right there in that same age range, and in my opinion, he should be viewed as an equal, if not even higher priority in terms of climbing further up the card. Which brings us right back to Zilla Fatu. As I mentioned earlier, only time is going to tell whether he ends up becoming a true centerpiece of this larger youth movement across the company. But regardless of how things play out from here, there is no denying that he has been handed a legitimate opportunity to establish himself, especially after a debut with that much weight behind it. And it should go without saying, but I will say it anyway, WWE management absolutely should not rush his development. He needs to be treated as a genuine long-term project rather than a quick fix. If the company is patient and allows him to spend real developmental time on NXT, arriving on the main roster as a polished, main event caliber performer by the time he reaches 30 years old, WWE could end up with a legitimate franchise cornerstone for the next 15 years. That is the kind of long-term payoff that makes patience worthwhile. And here is an interesting wrinkle to think about. Despite all the built-in credibility and name recognition that comes with being part of the Samoan wrestling dynasty, I actually think the smartest move for WWE Creative would be to let Zilla carve out his own individual identity, separate and apart from getting absorbed into the increasingly tired and overextended retread of the Bloodline storyline. That storyline has been run into the ground at this point, and tying Zilla too closely to it risks getting him lost in the shuffle instead of allowing him to shine as his own character with his own distinct story. At the end of the day, the biggest takeaway from this entire situation might not even be about Zilla Fatu individually. It might actually be about what his debut represents on a much larger scale, a possible signal that WWE is finally beginning to commit to a genuine youth movement, because if this company wants to remain successful for the next decade and beyond, creating new stars is not optional. It is essential. So that is our full breakdown for today. What do you think? Is WWE moving too fast with Zilla Fatu, or do you think this is exactly the kind of bold, forward-thinking bet the company needs to be making right now? Drop your thoughts down in the comments section below. I read through every single one of them, and I love seeing this community debate these topics. If you enjoyed this breakdown, do me a favor and smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow and helps more wrestling fans discover wrestling juice. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to join the family, because we have got a ton more deep dive content like this coming your way very soon. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.